Well, this morning we're continuing our series we've titled The Lost Art of Letter Writing, and we're looking at Paul's letters. He was a prolific letter writer, and he wrote to all the New Testament churches, and so we're going through one a week. So this week we come to the church in Ephesus, and there's one simple message, and this is where we're going this morning, is wake up your soul. And we're going to talk about the challenge of Paul for our souls to come alive. So I don't know if you've heard all of the history of our country and our presidents and their sleeping habits, but there's one maybe you haven't heard of. What happened is, I'm going to reach back, because here's what I'm going to start by saying, is that sometimes you can sleep through the most important things in life if you're not careful. So on March 3rd, this was 1849, President James Polk, his term expired. The next president-elect was Zachary Taylor. Zachary Taylor should have been sworn in the next day, which would have been March 4th, except it was a Sunday. So Zachary Taylor said, no, I want to be sworn in on Monday. And everyone said, fine, that's the 5th. Well, the morning of March 4th, on Sunday, officials in the White House realized that James Polk's term is over, and Zachary Taylor's not sworn in yet, and we don't have a president of the country. And so they looked at, well, who's in charge next? And it's the president of the Senate, the president pro tem, and his name was David Atkinson. So they sent a delegation to his house to say, you're president for a day. And they got to David Atkinson's house and knocked on the door, and his housekeeper answered. And they said, we need to see Senator Atkinson. And she said, no way. He had a late night last night. Some say it was inauguration weekend partying. He said he was just working hard. She said, he gave me strict orders not to wake him for anything. And they're saying, no, we need him now. It's very important. She said, no, I'll lose my job. There's no way you're coming in this house. And so they left, and he kept sleeping all day Sunday. True story. He goes to the inauguration on Monday. They said, Senator, what's wrong with you? You slept through your presidency yesterday. The most important things in life, you can sleep through them if you're not careful. I've learned this week. If you sleep through some things that are important in other countries, there are serious consequences. Do you know what happened this last week? The president of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, well, he had his minister of defense executed by a firing squad with an anti-aircraft gun, all right? Slight overkill, no pun intended. And they gave the reason as President Kim Jong-il, he said, the man fell asleep in a meeting. So they killed him. That was it. I'm not kidding. It's bad stuff. So take seriously what we're talking about today. I guess that's the point there. So Paul says this, open up to Ephesians chapter 5, and he starts talking about our souls coming alive, waking up. Verse 8, you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of the light. For the fruit of life consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth, and find out what pleases the Lord. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. It is shameful even to mention what the disobedient do in secret, but everything exposed by the light becomes visible, and everything that is illuminated becomes a light. That's your life. Verse 14. This is why it is said, and underline these words, wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity. And so Paul writes this challenge to the church. And when we read it, some people may think, well, he's writing to unbelievers and they're in the darkness of unbelief. And that's not the case. He's writing to the church in Ephesus, and it's one of the most faithful churches. They attend regularly. They sing great songs, but he says, your soul is asleep. This is not written to unbelievers. It's written to church attendees. And the truth is, there's a kind of slumber of the soul that keeps millions of Christians even today in the dark. And so I have this key idea on the screen. It's in your handout, and it's this. Too many people live unfulfilled lives. And I want to say this morning, there is a spiritual giant in you waiting to wake up. So wake up and become this deeply spiritual person who God made you to be. I want to go through some thoughts as we look at this package of these couple of sentences that Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 5. And the first thing I want to say is his writing to say, wake up your soul. And here's the verse again, verse 14. Wake up, sleeper, rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Paul's letter is about the soul. And Paul's letter is about this. It's about the fact that you are a spiritual being. And sometimes I think we forget, because we get so wrapped up in this physical life, that you have a soul. You are a spiritual being. You see, I want you to think this morning and really clarify in your minds. Maybe you haven't thought about it much, but there are really two yous. There are two of all of us. There's the physical you that everyone sees on the outside. But then on the inside, there's the spiritual you. There's your soul. And this morning is about keeping your soul and taking care of your soul. Because so often we can ignore the soul because we can't see it. And the soul, when we ignore our soul, it becomes, it starts to slumber and becomes catatonic. And today I want to talk about not just waking up your soul, but caring for your soul. So I grew up playing soccer. That was my sport. That was my sweet spot. And every day growing up, and this was in Liberia, West Africa, where I learned to play, all the kids would show up on the field at like 4:30, and we would choose teams. Now, can I tell you who was the last kid picked and where we put them? The worst player out there was always put in the goal. They're called the goalkeeper. And as kids, we ignored the fact that the goalkeeper might be the most important player on the field, but we always put the worst kid in the goal. And because we said, you're going to hurt us on the field. But the keeper of the goal is critical. So when we had matches, we would have road trips. They were actually village jungle trail trips to other villages, and we'd go play other. We had a team, and I'm going to just share something here. It's kind of embarrassing, but our team's name was PPT, which stands for Paul and Palmer's team. That was our team. And so we're twins. My parents thought it was awesome. Now it's kind of weird. So that was our team's name, PPT. And so on road trips or jungle trail trips, our goalkeeper, James Ponto, we always had the same guy. He loved to dive in the goal. He's like an Olympic swimmer diving. He would dive any direction. But whenever we showed up in a village, I'm not making this up, James Ponto would get a stick and he would start to dig, or if this is the goalpost, he would start to dig around the goalpost. We'd say, James, what are you doing? He says, I'm looking for the juju. I know they put some juju to make me miss the ball. And sometimes he would find like charcoal wrapped in a piece of cloth, and you'd say, you see, Palmer, they're trying to witch me. And one time he finds a chicken's foot, he finds a chicken's head, and he'd say, Palmer, it's making me crazy. My eyes are turning. I'm dizzy. I'm saying, James, you're making yourself crazy. And every time there's a goal, he would blame the juju. But that was James Ponto. But the goalkeeper's responsibility is to care for the goal. And really, the success of the team, think about it, it depends ultimately on how well the goalkeeper does. Yes, you need goals to score and win. And you, my point in this is you are the keeper of your soul. One of your great God-given responsibilities is to care for your soul. Starting in the Old Testament, we read, for example, in Proverbs 4, in verse 23, guard your heart, or really it's guard your soul, because everything you do flows from it. The soul is critical to who we are. But what is the soul? If I ask you to describe the soul or to define the soul, I don't know if most people could say a whole lot. And so I want to start with kind of laying out a theology of the soul. It sounds riveting, doesn't it? But we're going to have, I think there's something interesting here. You see, like I said a few moments ago, there are two yous. There's the outside you, the physical you. There's the you that everybody sees. And then there's the inside you. The outside you is your appearance and how you look and how you're perceived. We're always on display for the world, so we pay a lot of attention to the outside you, how we dress, how we impress people. The outside you is constantly busy because that's the part that impresses everyone. And so we rush and we live hectic lives. We're busy people, taxing kids, if you have kids, from cheer to soccer to dance to football to whatever's happening in your lives. And we live these busy, hectic outside lives. Do you know that every 11 minutes now they found that the average American is interrupted. Every 11 minutes you get a text, an email, a phone call, someone walks in your office. Do you know that after a phone call, one phone call, it takes 25 minutes for you to get back to the task that you're originally on? So we live this constantly interrupted life. And so, but because it's what everyone else sees, we pay so much attention to the physical you and to the outside you at the expense of ignoring the soul. And that's the other half of you. It's the inside you. It's the spiritual you. You see, you are not just matter. You are not just a physical being. God made you with a soul. God made you with a spirit and a soul that lasts forever. And like I said, you are the keeper of your soul. That's one of our great God-given responsibilities, because maybe there's nothing more important you do in life than to care for your soul, because it lasts forever. And it's your soul that interacts with and has communion with the Holy Spirit, with God. And so that's why I say maybe the soul matters most. And I hope this morning to wake up your soul if it's become numb and catatonic, and help you to become that kind of godly person that He made you to be. There's like I said a moment ago, there's a physical you. But I hope that you realize this morning that you are far more than just a physical being. You see, I know that there are moments in your life when it hits you that there's something spiritual happening. Maybe it was a moment you held your first baby and you realized something divine was happening in that moment. Or maybe you're on the beach with your family and the sun's setting and you're in Carlsbad and you're going, man, there's something here, and you can't touch it, you can't really see it, but it's your soul saying, I'm alive, you're alive, and you're a spiritual being. Maybe it's dinner with friends. Maybe it's listening to your favorite song. But we get those moments every once in a while when your soul wakes up and it says, I'm here. And it's because God has made you to be a spiritual being. And if you're going to care for something, so think about this. If you're going to care for your soul, but if you're going to care for anything, whether it's a Chevy Impala, a golden retriever, or your soul, you need to know something about it if you're going to be the keeper of your soul. So Dallas Willard has written, he kind of gives not just a definition, but he draws a diagram to help us understand the soul. And so I brought it on some slides. Let's look at it together. And he says, really, the spirit or the person, you, are made up of 4 parts. And he says, first, we all have a will. I've heard this referred to as the emotional center of our lives. The will is what feels joy and happiness or sadness and depression, but it's the affective center of the human being. And then just after the will, you have the mind. The mind is how we think. It's how we know things. The mind understands. We have this cognitive ability that God has given us. So we have our emotions, and then we have our mind. But we're not just cognitive beings. We also are next as physical beings. We have a body, and so there's the physical you that we've been talking about. And then not in addition to those, but the one that pulls them all together is the soul. The soul is the unifying, harmonizing part of who we are as God's creation that pulls our will and our emotions and our thinking and our thoughts and our acts, and it pulls it together into one person. And that's your soul. That's how Dallas Willard explains it. And Jesus, when he talked about the soul, he said this. This is Mark 8:36. What good is it if you gain the whole world, but you lose your soul? And Jesus knew that if you lose your soul, if you don't pay attention to your soul, that has eternal consequences. And so Jesus says, pay attention to your soul. And stop paying so much attention to the busyness of the outside world and start to let the spiritual part of you come alive and shine. And so how are we going to care for the soul? How does that happen? The first thing that I want to say is that you must next wake up, Paul says, these are Paul's words, to the darkness that is on the inside. If you, now Paul, he says these words about wake up, O sleeper. I don't know if you know this, but he's quoting from the ancient prophet Isaiah. And here's what Isaiah, and by the way, this was a Hebrew hymn, and all the Jewish people knew it, and they sang it regularly. Isaiah 60, verse 1, arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over its people, but the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. In the original Hebrew, it starts by saying, rise and shine. I love those words. And Paul, if we go back to Ephesians 5:11, he says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. So if the spiritual you is going to come alive, and you're going to be that spiritual man or godly woman that you were made to be, you have to wake up to the things that are dark on the inside. And when Christ's light shine on you, you become aware that these things need to be gone. And so Paul's challenge is, in many ways, to get rid of those things in your life that are causing it to be dark. Get rid of the addictive habits. Get rid of the destructive relationships. Get rid of the secrets and the deception. Get rid of the poisonous words that you say about other people. Get rid of the jealousy and the envy that is consuming you. Because it's not until you deal with those things on the inside that turn our souls dark can you become that light of Christ that he talks about in Ephesians 5. And then next I would say this, wake up and become the godly person God made you to be. So if we go back to Ephesians 5, let's read verse 10. And this time I want to read it from the Message Bible. Figure out what will please Christ and then do it. Don't waste your time on useless work. He says, find out what pleases Christ and then do it. Start living that way. But maybe for years, maybe it's been months, but maybe for you it's been years and years that your soul has slumbered. And you haven't been that godly man or that godly woman that you know you can be. And I want to say today you can wake up. It's kind of like this. I was having lunch this last week with a new friend, and he was telling me about how he started going to church with his family. And he's reaching back a few years, and he said what happened is he was laying on the couch. This was in the fall. It was football season. And he said he was laying on the couch, his normal position on Sundays, waiting for the first game to start. And as he's laying there, all of a sudden his wife comes through the living room, and she's dressed all beautiful, and she's got 3 kids in tow, and she has a stroller, and they're all dressed. Their hair is combed, they're done, and she has a stroller, and she's got Bibles and snacks for the kids to keep them happy and busy. And they're walking out the door through the living room on their way to church while he stays on the couch. And as they were walking past, he said, Palmer, I said to myself, you're a loser. That's what he said. He said, I'm a loser. He said, I can't believe I'm laying here while my family is heading to church without me. So as his wife was about to close the door, he yelled, hey, stop. Could you wait just 5 minutes? Give me 5 minutes. I can get changed and cleaned up in 5 minutes. And he said, from that Sunday on, they started to worship together. And then DVR the football. That was important too. And then come back to that later, but not to put that behind us. And maybe that's been your life. Maybe you have not stepped up in your family or in your marriage, among your friends. Maybe you haven't been that godly leader, that godly person. And I will say today is a day to wake up your soul. I think every living person, every person that's ever been alive has felt a void in their soul at some time. Maybe for months now, you've been waking up in the mornings with a small sadness. Maybe it's not right now, maybe it was before, but maybe it's right now. You wake up with this small sadness because you know that you're not going where God made you to go. You know that you're getting up in the morning and you're not doing what God made you to do. You're not living the life that you know he created you to live. There's this dream that you have of the way life can be, and you wake up in the morning and you're not doing it. And I want to say it's because your soul has slumbered. You turn around and you think about, well, it's my husband's fault or my wife's fault. That's why I'm feeling this. Or it's my kids' fault. They're not behaving right. Or you think it's your work's fault and they don't value you. And I want to say, no, the problem is with your soul. You've let your soul fall asleep and slumber. You haven't paid attention to it. And so I challenge you this morning to wake up and become the godly man, the godly woman that you're made to be. I'll say this next, that wake up, and these are Paul's words again, and let the light of Christ shine through your life. So if we go back to verse 8, here's how he says it in verse 8. You were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. And then we have this, the bright light of Christ makes your way plain. And like Isaiah said, rise and shine. So my challenge here, and Paul's challenge here, is to say, God, let the light of Christ shine through my life and light up my marriage if it's been dark, or light up my family, or light up my workplace if it's been a place of darkness. But God, let your light shine through my life. My invitation is for you to make that your prayer this morning. When I say that, I think about sky lanterns. We have some sky lanterns here this morning. I don't know much about sky lanterns, but sky lanterns come out of China, and the Chinese have this great tradition of writing a message on sky lanterns, and then you light them and you let them go. So a week and a half ago, I was in Nashville meeting with my publisher, and they were telling me about some of the new books they have coming out this fall they're excited about, and one is titled Sky Lantern. And it's written by a young man named Matt Michelatos. I think I'm saying that right, Michelatos. And he's a writer and a blogger. And what happened is the title is Sky Lantern because he writes about a sky lantern he found. He said he drove home one evening, pulled into his driveway, and he saw something laying right next to his driveway in the grass. And so he got out and he goes, whoa, this is a sky lantern. And as he looked at it, he saw that there's a note there. And the note was really simple, it was really short, and it said this, Dad, I miss you so much, and I love you. And then there was a heart, and it said, Steph, Dad, I miss you so much, and I love you. And as he read that, he thought, wow, it feels like this was written by a girl who's lost her father. And so he took the sky lantern inside with the note, and it was just kind of, he couldn't get it off his heart, out of his mind, and so he sat down that night and he wrote this. He writes a blog, and so he wrote something and posted. He said, he said, Dear Steph, he said, if I was your father, this is what I would say to you, because I have 3 daughters, and these are the things that I want them to know. These are the things that I want them to know that I feel about them. And maybe your father never had the chance to tell you. So here are my words to you, Stephanie, and to my 3 daughters. And he wrote this, I've always loved you. I am immensely proud of you. Do something meaningful with your life. Be brave. And find people who know how precious you are. So do you get what he's doing? He's writing to his daughters. He's writing to Steph on behalf of her father. And he writes, I've always loved you. I'm immensely proud of you. Do something meaningful with your life. Be brave. Find people who know how precious you are. And then he posted it. Well, when people saw it, it got reposted and reposted like hundreds of thousands of times until Stephanie saw it. And then Stephanie and her mother got a hold of Matt. And Stephanie's mother said, yes, my husband did die. Stephanie's father did die. And she said, you know what? He wasn't much of a writer, but what you wrote is exactly what my husband would have said to Stephanie. And maybe that story is your story. Maybe there are all these words on the inside of your chest that you've never gotten out. Maybe there's all of these ways that you know you should be leading your family or your marriage or your friends spiritually, and you never have. And so I want to invite you to do something. You don't have to, but it's my invitation. We put a piece of paper in your bulletin. It's just a simple piece of newspaper paper, and it's really light because it has to float. I'll tell you why in a moment. And I want to invite you. I have a start to a note. And this could be, this could be to a son or a daughter. It could be all your sons and daughters. It could be to your mother and your father. It could be to your best friend. It could be to your husband or your wife. But what are the things? If you didn't have the chance tomorrow to say everything you wanted to say to them, what are the most important things that you want them to know right now? More than anything else, I want you to know. And then finish that. And then here's what we're going to do. It gets even more epic because after you write it, I invite you to come back tonight, and we have already purchased 550, what are these called? Sky lanterns. And we're going to invite you to attach your note, and then we're going to light them and let them go. And that it's not going to stay up. It's just, that's helium in there. But sky lanterns are heavier than helium. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to light this. It'll be kind of like the Hindenburg, and there's helium in here. It may not go well, but no. So tonight, we have 550 sky lanterns, and we want to invite you to come back, bring your note, and then we're going to after dinner, we're going to pull all the kids together, all the adults together, and we're going to light these sky lanterns and let them go, and it's going to be unbelievable. And by the way, some of you are thinking fire department. We have made arrangements. We're going to have a fire truck here, and it's all going to be supervised, and it's going to go really well. That's what I'm going to tell you. And so I just want you to think about tonight. You have a couple of choices of things you can do tonight. You can come, and you can, for the first time with your kids and your family, together light a sky lantern. Let your kids play with fire. Watch it go up in the air. All these colorful 500 and something sky lanterns. We're going to play Josh's song, Light Up the Sky, at the same time. We're going to hit play on that. So you can do that tonight, or you can stay home and watch another episode of Swamp People. So those are your two choices. Those are the two choices you have tonight. So as Josh and I were talking about what I was speaking on this week, I had said, it's like on Tuesday, I said, Josh, man, I've been looking for a song on waking up the soul, and I can't find one. He says, well, we have a new album coming out, and I've just finished a song. It's called Wake Up My Heart. And so Josh has written just these beautiful words. Would you listen to them? And he's going to share them as maybe you write this note, and we can put that back up on the screen, this note to a son or daughter or husband or wife or mother or father.